what up, though? Welcome to episode 28 of my podcast. I am Brian Onrea Bell. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening to this on any podcast service, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like this particular video, subscribe to the channel. I've got nothing but positive energy and good news for you. You feel me? I know it's been a long week since my last podcast. Some of y'all have been hitting me up asking when is the next podcast. Well, here it is. I'm back, and I want to be an example of why you should never ever give up. Just because you go through tough times, just because you may face adversity in your life, you should still keep going. I want to be an example. I want to be a pillar of pushing through despite things that are going on in your life. Push through, stay consistent, stay faithful to your dreams. When God gives you a dream, I want to be an example of sticking to it. And those of you watching this, God gave you a dream. God gave you a vision. No matter how big or small it may seem, I want you to stick with it. Never give up. No matter what you're going through, no matter who leaves you, no matter who does you, however, no matter what happens in your job, no matter what happens in your personal life, I want you to just chase those dreams, because the universe, God would not have gave you those dreams if he didn't give you the ability to fulfill those dreams, if he wasn't going to walk with you through the storm. We face many storms in life, and God will always stay with you through those storms, And it's crazy because a lot of the storms we endure, a lot of the hardship we endure is from self-inflicted wounds. A lot of the problems we have in our life, we don't want to take accountability sometimes. A lot of times we run from accountability, but the fact is, I would say at least half of our troubles that we face, especially as adults, are from things that we caused. We don't want to talk about that. And we cause a lot of our afflictions. We cause a lot of our bad situations. However, no matter what the cause, I believe that God will still pull you through, if we're willing to take accountability for our actions, if we're willing to take a good self-assessment of our life and make corrections. I believe that God will pull us through. And even when you do make mistakes, even when you do cause yourself to get in bad situations, the calling and the purpose for your life never changes. God can use imperfect people. You don't got to be perfect for God to use you. I'm not familiar with too many religious books outside of the Bible, but I'm sure even in other religious books, just like the Bible, you will see where God uses some pretty messed up people to fulfill his purpose and fulfill his will, So just because you may have messed up, or just because you may have did some crazy stuff, whatever purpose God has for you, he still wants you to fulfill that purpose. So it's up to us to take personal accountability for when we, mess up, from when we do wrong, and make sure that if you fall off the wagon, get back on the wagon, because, God called you to do something, and the people that you're supposed to reach, the people that you're supposed to touch, they still need you. They still need what you have. Now, having said that, a lot of times you got to understand that there's consequences to actions. So sometimes when we mess up, we got to face the consequences, and I believe that that's part of life. And a lot of times, when we deal with adverse situations, when we deal with heartbreak, when we deal with things that are just messed up, we got to realize that it's self-imposed, but God will still pull us through, man. So I said all that to say that stay consistent, don't be afraid to keep going when you're going through the storm. When you're going through the storm, keep going. But at the same time, self-assessment is critical. Look in that mirror. Take a good long look in the mirror every single day and check yourself, because a lot of the stuff you're going through could be self-imposed, And most definitely for the stuff that is out of your control, or the stuff that's not self-imposed, you definitely got what it takes to make it through that. But whatever it is, just keep going. Stay consistent. Like I said, I want to be a pillar of consistency for y'all. You know, keep fighting the fight. Never give up. Whatever plans you have, whatever purpose you feel like you have in your heart, don't stop chasing after that purpose. You feel me? Because I'm not going to stop. If I'm not going to stop, I don't want you to stop. You feel me? Let's keep going. Now, having said all that, when you're being consistent and when you're chasing after a dream, of course you got to stay consistent, but sometimes it's key to make adjustments, And I think the whole Onrea initiative, that name, I don't like that name no more for the podcast. So I think I'm going to change the name from the Onrea initiative. If you notice, I didn't mention the Onrea initiative when the podcast first started. I'm not sure what it's going to be called permanently. For now, I'm just going to call this the Onrea podcast. You know what I'm saying? It's still episode 28 of the Onrea podcast. I don't know if I like that name either, but we'll see as time goes on what the permanent name will be. But it's not the Onrea initiative no more. I'm still Brian Onrea Bell. You know what I'm saying? That's my, almost my full name, Brian Oliver Onrea Bell. But the Onrea initiative, man, that whole name is dead. We're going to go with something new. So for now, it's the Onrea podcast. Now today, what I want to really highlight, I want to talk about negative coverage in the media versus positive coverage in the media, and why we as a society are so gravitated to the negative versus the positive. Right off the bat, I want to highlight an excellent interview that I saw on I Am Athlete. I Am Athlete is the podcast platform from Brandon Marshall. And Brandon Marshall was a trailblazer because he was one of the first ones, to really, I don't know if he was the first. He wasn't the first, but he's one of the first ones to really go big on like athletes doing the professional podcast. His podcast has always looked good, always been clean. The production has always been top notch. So he put out an interview last week with Russell Wilson. And let me just tell you, it was a very good interview. If you haven't watched the I Am Athlete podcast with Russell Wilson, go check it out because Russell Wilson, I don't think he's ever done a podcast. He doesn't really do a lot of in-depth interviews. You hear him talk after the football games. He gives, he talks to the press, but you don't really hear him really give his thoughts on stuff. And he even said it in the interview that he don't like to talk. He like to just let his actions speak. It was a very, very positive interview. He talked about his work ethic. He's a Super Bowl champion. He went to the Super Bowl 2 times. He's had a heck of a run in his first, I think, 10 seasons, future Hall of Fame quarterback. And he talked about his process. He talked about his parents. His father passed away. He's talking about how his parents raised him. He talked about his family values, his faith in God, his marriage to Sierra, and how, how family is important to him, how he took the job of a stepdad very, very seriously when he first met his son Future, which is not his biological son, how he met him in 9 months and he made a decision that he was going to be that kid's father. Just a great interview. A lot of good nuggets in there.
It's just got a lot of respect for people, man. I think also too, for me as a player and as a man, and especially even as a black man, I just fundamentally believe that I don't ever want to talk bad about people, nor do I ever want to tear people down. I just fundamentally don't believe in that. I believe in uplifting each other and believe it. Because, it's hard enough to get to where we are. Hard enough to play in this game. It's hard enough to play long enough.
Funny how, like, even after a couple of days, it only had a couple 100,000 views, whereas if he was on there, like, clapping back at people, clapping back at Marshawn Lynch or Shannon Sharpe or the Broncos fans or the Broncos in general, because Russell Wilson has been talked about like a dog the last couple of years. As a matter of fact, talking negatively about Russell Wilson has been used for clicks big time, especially last season. Last season, he didn't even play bad, but they would try to like spin every article as if he was playing bad, as if he was the reason why the Broncos were struggling. It was a trip, man. And now that this positive interview came out, he even said in the interview that he didn't want to ever talk bad about people, and how he always took the high road. And of course, I don't know what an interview is now. I still think it's less than 1 million, probably less than 500,000. I forgot to check before I started running the camera. But this positive podcast is not it's getting a little bit of publicity, but not hardly any publicity, not a lot of views. Whereas you talk about the Cat Williams, Shannon Sharpe interview or the Monique Shannon Sharpe interview, or all the people who clapping back at Monique and clapping back at Cat Williams, it's a real big deal. But why don't we celebrate positive energy? Why don't we celebrate this man, Russell Wilson, what he's talking about? How come we're all not getting excited about the things he was saying? It's really crazy, y'all. It's really crazy. But check that interview out. Also, on the flip side of that coin, speaking of Shannon Sharpe and Club Shay Shay, he interviewed Terry Crews. Another excellent interview. And you know what? Terry Crews wasn't talking crazy about nobody. He wasn't throwing shots at nobody. And to, Shannon Sharpe's credit, the interview has a couple million views already. And I'll say, I think I said this before, that Shannon Sharpe is in the zone where everything he drops is going to get 1 million+ views. Like, he's at that level now. He's broke that barrier where when he drops something, everybody going to check for it, And in this interview, Terry Crews, I'm sorry, I hope that scratching didn't pick up on the camera. But Terry Crews had a lot of good things to say. He talked about his story of how he came from Flint, Michigan. And funny story, I seen Terry Crews once in Detroit, well, in the suburb called Birmingham, a plush suburb, eating at the Original Pancake House years ago. This had to be 2004, 2005 maybe. He was eating with his family. I guess it was with his family. And I didn't walk up to him. I didn't say nothing to him. It was real crowded. It was one of those Sunday morning brunches where everybody there eating. And I was like, that's Terry Crews, the guy from Everybody Hates Chris, So shout out to Terry Crews, man. But he's from Flint. And he talked about how he came up. He went to the NFL. He played in the NFL for a few years, I think 4 or 5 years. He had a rough time in the NFL, and how him and his wife struggled to make it in LA when he first went to be an actor, how he had to sweep floors and work security. He talked about how, he had been unfaithful to his wife, and how him and his wife had to kind of patch that up. It was a real, real deep interview. He talked about confronting his father. His father beat his mom, and he beat his father up. Oh, it was really some really compelling stuff. He talked about how he had an issue with Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade, and how he apologized and how they reconciled. And just a beautiful, beautiful interview.
You don't have forever. You don't. You gotta go for it. You got to get what you are come to get now. And you can't waste time. You can't treat it like, well, I'll whatever.
Tomorrow. It ain't never over.
It's never how you start. It's how you finish.
So it doesn't have the impact that the Cat Williams or the Monique interview had. And it's just man, why are we so enthralled with the negative? It's sort of like when you're driving and there's a car accident and everybody wants to stop and look. It's a little bit of that going on, but I just think we ought to highlight more positive stuff, man. And we ought to champion the positive stuff, because here's the thing. The reason why clickbait even exists is because we click on it. It's called bait. When you go fishing, I'm not a fisher, but I don't fish, but I know the general principle. You put the bait on the hook, and when they bite, you reel them in, right? Well, we're the ones biting the bait. We're taking the bait and clicking on it. And I'm guilty as well of this, But even when I highlight the drama, I try to bring some levity and some positive energy to it and some positive spin to it, because like when Shannon Sharpe was beefing with with Mike Epps, I'm going to cover it, but I'm going to talk reasonably and try to bring some positive energy to it and talk about why they shouldn't be beefing and why they should promote unity. Even like Benzino and Eminem, how hopefully they reconcile one day. I'm always going to take the negative and turn it into a positive. That's the reason why I'm here. One of the primary reasons why I'm here is to spread positive energy, to combat the negative stuff. But even when I post that stuff, it gets a lot of clicks because it's the topic of the day. So maybe I'm part of the problem too, but I want us to really start talking about positive stuff. So go check out the Russell Wilson interview with Brandon Marshall. Check out the Terry Crews interview with Shannon Sharpe. Those are some good positive interviews, man, that you will leave the interview feeling uplifted and feeling like you want to attack your goals and attack your dreams. That's what I'm all about, attacking goals and dreams. And I promise you all, I promise the audience, that when I find content that's uplifting, when I find content that's positive, I'm going to share it with you. You feel what I'm saying? So we can all go to that next level together. You know, speaking of positive stuff, NBA legend Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson has his own podcast show called The Mark Jackson Show on the It Is What It Is network, ran by Cam and Mace. You know, shout out to them for bringing Mark Jackson in. Mark Jackson is somebody, first of all, you know, I'm from Detroit. I'm a Pistons fan. And, you know, since Mark Jackson got fired from the Golden State Warriors back in, 2015, 2014, 2016. It was a long time ago. He had an excellent record with Golden State. He did a good job coaching there. And I think there's been about 2 or 3 Piston head coaching vacancies since then. And I've always beat the table and said, Pistons, hire Mark Jackson as your coach. My goodness, I would love for Mark Jackson to be our coach, even right now. And why Mark Jackson's not a head coach just baffles me. And on his show, Stephen A. Smith was a guest on the Mark Jackson show this past week, and he even asked him why he wasn't a head coach, and he just basically said that he didn't have the connections. You know, he took the high road, you know what I'm saying? But it's got to be, you know, when you talk about somebody getting blackballed, that's the definition of being blackballed. But at any rate, this Mark Jackson show is pretty good. He has his son on the show with him, and I think it's always good when fathers and sons can do stuff, you know, like Hit Boy and Big Hit. So Mark Jackson and his son got a podcast together. It's real beautiful. They got 3 episodes out. They had Stephen A. Smith as the first guest. Good show. So check that out. It's another positive podcast, you know what I'm saying? More positive news, man. LeBron James, just I think last night against the Denver Nuggets, or the night before, I think it was last night, he scored 40,000 points. That's a big deal because nobody has scored 40,000 points. You know, last year, LeBron James passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the highest scorer in NBA history. And now he's at a point nobody's ever touched 40,000. And he's still playing. He might score 43, 44, 45,000 before it's all over with, you know. Shout out to LeBron James, man. Still doing the big. Salute to him. That's a testament to just excellence, you know. Just being like an excellent player for so many years. You know, I remember LeBron James was in high school. You know what I'm saying? I was a grown man then. I'm still growing. I'm an older grown man now. But, like, he's still playing at a high level. We've never seen anybody play at a high level in basketball this long. So shout out to LeBron James, man. You know, when you talk about excellence, I don't care if you don't like basketball, but if you're a fan of excellence and just being proficient and just doing your job well and consistency, LeBron James is somebody you got to look to. Even taking care of your body. You know, one of the reasons why athletes retire is because they get tired of taking care of their body, or maybe they're not taking care of their body as well, and their body breaks down as they get older. But LeBron, I think he's 39 years old, to still be performing, dunking, and shooting, and, you know, shout out to him, man. Shout out to LeBron. Before I get out of here, let's talk about some new music. There wasn't much new music that I liked this week, so I don't have much to talk about. But I do want to talk about Beyonce. Both country songs went #1 on the country charts, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding that. A lot of folks in the country world are resisting or trying to resist Beyonce's #1 country song, Texas Hold'em, and what was the other one? I forgot the other one. 16 Carriages, something like that. I don't know. But I thought they were good songs, but I don't really listen to country that much. But people were complaining because all the Beyonce fans were flooding the radio stations to request a song, which brought it to #1. And a lot of them streamed it a whole lot, which brought it to #1. And a lot of them bought the album, which brought the singles, which brought it to #1. And people are complaining and saying that it's not fair because she has a big fan base. That's why she's #1. Newsflash, people. Newsflash. Part of being #1 is having a lot of fans. Part of being #1 is because part of having a lot of fans means you're going to be #1. They go hand in hand. So, of course, it's fair that her fans ran those numbers up and put it to #1. You know what I'm saying? Now, the real test, though, would be how long will it stay #1? How long will it stay at the top of the charts? You know, that's the real test. But I think it's very fair that Beyonce has a country song that's #1 because she earned it. The songs are country, you know, sonically, artistically. It's definitely in the country category. And don't even get me started because a lot of this stuff that y'all call country now sounds like pop music. So this sounds more country than a lot of y'all songs that y'all prop up these days. So shout out to Beyonce, and shout out to her having the #1 song. And I think it is fair, that her fans, get a fan base, keep working, you know what I'm saying? And the last thing I'll say is Beyonce, being a black artist, African-American artist doing country music, has highlighted that I didn't even know about a lot of country artists that are black that are doing their thing. Shout out to Blanco Brown. It's crazy because I interviewed Blanco a couple times on my other podcast, the Free Game Podcast. And at the time I interviewed him, both times he was still writing R&B. I didn't know nothing about no country, you know what I'm saying? And now he's blowing up in the country world. So shout out to him. But yeah, a lot of black country artists out there are doing their thing. And it's highlighting that. And I think that it's cool. I think that, again, I promote unity among races. I promote unity among everybody. And I think it's cool that, black people can do something that was considered predominantly white and vice versa. I think we should share culture. We should work together, I would love to see Beyonce or some of these black artists in country work with some of the prominent white artists in country, to show unity. We need unity and love in this country. And I will say, unfortunately, a lot of the backlash that Beyonce is getting in country does seem like it could be racism. I think we got to combat racism with love. Combat hate with love. Spread love to combat hate. So let's embrace Beyonce doing country music. If a white artist is authentic and they really love hip hop, I say again, listen to this. If a white artist truly loves the hip hop culture and respects it, let's celebrate the white artists doing hip hop well. When they like Eminem, who proves they love and appreciate the culture. Let's celebrate that, and vice versa. When you get in the country, love and respect that culture. Let's love and respect one another's cultures and share cultures and just unify. I think we got to be more unified as people. Love one another, spread love, not hate. The elections coming up. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and Donald Trump is very polarizing. Let's not get caught up in this election season and hating each other. Let's love each other. If we're going to debate politics, let's debate the issues. Let's not make it about race. Let's love one another. Let's be together. Again, that's the positive versus negative. Race baiting gets you a lot of clicks. If you want to accuse racism or talk about race related stuff, it gets all the clicks. What about when races love each other? What about when races come together in harmony? Let's promote that. Let's prop that up. You know what I'm saying? So let's spread love and let's combat hate. Positive versus negative, man. That's been my positive motivation for today. That's been my podcast, man. The Onrea podcast. I love y'all, man. I really love you. If you made it this far in the podcast, that means you listen to the whole thing. I really love y'all, man. Especially right now in my life, man. The support that y'all give me, it means a lot, man. When I get DMs from people asking about the podcast, people send me different topics to talk about on the podcast. That means a lot to me. It really does. I can get emotional now just thinking about it. All y'all to support me. It means everything, and I want to support y'all as well. That's why I owe it to y'all, despite what I'm going through, to press on and do my podcast, because I owe y'all. Y'all been good to me. And I have a feeling y'all gonna keep being good to me. So I'm gonna keep being good to y'all, man. Together, we will chase our dreams, man. I love y'all. Until next time, I'm out.